delay with the comments there. Brilliant. So thanks for joining. I'm just going to give a wee bit of a synopsis of the evening, and then we'll get underway. So my talk tonight is primarily going to be about the solstice. I'm going to talk about solar timekeeping first of all, then we're going to go into the seasons, into the definition of the solstice itself, and I'm going to touch on a little bit on ancient monuments, which is a topic I'm fascinated with. So we're maybe going to talk a little bit about Stonehenge and then some more local Neolithic sites in Scotland. A little bit of an update on the conjunction. I know some of you were disappointed not to see this evening. And if there's time, we'll do a WhatsApp, a quick sky tour using planetarium software. And at the end, we have the storytelling segment with Clelland. Now that's going to last about 20-30 minutes. So I was a little bit disappointed I couldn't have aired this earlier. I know there might be some young folks who might want to listen to the storytelling. My advice is, if this is too late, you can watch it again on Facebook Live. Once I'm finished the feed, this will go up on the page, so please feel free to watch it again. As far as comments are concerned, I'll try to have a look and answer some questions before I hand over to the storytelling section. But without further ado, I'll proceed into the talk. So just quickly about my work. So I'm Stephen McIntosh, I'm an outreach astronomer. I run two astronomy outreach programs in the Highlands of Scotland. This is Star Stories, which is connected to tonight's talk, and this is a Breacan, a community forest about 6 miles south of Inverness. It's above Loch Ness, it's very wild and rural, and it's got lovely dark skies, and we run these amazing family events which have science, stargazing, and they also have storytelling elements. And this is Clelland, captivating an audience round the campfire, and we'll have some of Clelland later on. We've also tried to integrate landscape into this programme, so we actually have a wooden henge that we've erected, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the significance of landscape structures like this later on in the talk. And this is run in collaboration with the STFC. And the other programme I lead with Caroline Snow is an urban astronomy programme in Inverness, and this is at the Merkinch Nature Reserve. I did a talk recently on buying your own your first telescope. If you want to have a look at that, it's on the page, and that was in collaboration with Merkinch. I also do work for a number of hotels around the Highlands. This is the Torridon, way over in the Wild West, and this is the Steadings near Inverness. And I visit numerous festivals as well when I can find the time. So enough about me. Now, I gave this little introduction at the start of my last talk, but given that many of you may not be local, I wanted just to say welcome from the Highlands, which is where I live, and no doubt many of the people listening to the feed come from the Highlands as well. This is an apt image because this was taken last year on the summer solstice. So 6 months ago, when the days were very long, and in fact in the north of Scotland up in Inverness we really don't get darkness at all in midsummer, which isn't so good for stargazing, but we do get these beautiful long extended sunsets. This is an Arasaig looking over towards some of the islands, towards Skye, and lovely sunsets. When it gets to winter time though, like now, we are blessed with dark skies. Here is a survey map of dark skies in the north of Scotland, north of the Central Belt. And I hope you can appreciate some world-class skies up here. Now, I live in Inverness, which, it has a fair bit of light pollution, but you don't have to go very far to get into very dark skies. And in fact, there's a dark sky park in the Cairngorms here, which isn't the darkest area in the Highlands. So that just shows you if you go further west, you can actually get into potentially Bortle 1 skies, so some of the darkest skies in the world actually. The problem, of course, is the weather. But I've got some images I want to show you now. So aurora is much more commonplace than many people think up here. I took this image at Bun Crew, looking over towards the Black Isle. And I've even imaged it from my own house. This is in Inverness, at the west side of Inverness, and I've taken a picture looking over towards the Black Isle. But one of the best sites that we can access up in the Highlands, or indeed in any dark area, is the Milky Way. Now, the next few images I'm going to show you are all from Brecon, which is who are sponsoring the talk tonight. And these are some of the skies you can access over Brecon. Here we see the Milky Way arcing overhead. This is the star Vega here, which is about 25 light years away. But for those who have not seen the Milky Way, I would encourage you to come to dark locations like the Highlands to access it. This is a reminder that we're embedded in a spiral galaxy, this thin, diffuse lane of light that we can see. This particular region of the Milky Way is near Cygnus, and you can actually see dark regions within the bright band of the Milky Way here. And those are dust clouds obscuring our views from deeper into the galactic disk. And indeed, in this direction, and in winter time, looking towards the south, you are looking into the plane of the Milky Way here. And that's why it's so bright and vibrant. Here's another picture from Brecon. Some of you may recognize this knot of stars up here. This is the Pleiades open star cluster, a lovely object to see in binoculars. And down below, this is Taurus, and the orange star here is a red giant star called Aldebaran, a dying star that's extended, it's cooled, and it's in its last throes. And this is Taurus here, incidentally. You might be able to make out the V shape here. And I'm sure many of you will recognize this constellation. Again, this is from Brecon. Also, this is part of Orion. I've used quite a long exposure here, so the stars look a little bit bloated. But you can see Betelgeuse, which I was talking about recently in a live session. The red supergiant that is a supernova candidate. It may well go supernova within a time scale of 10 to 100,000 years or more. We just don't know. And it's about 500 to 600 light years away. And these are the main belt stars of Orion. And of course the nebula in Orion as well. And finally, this is a picture I took, which I've kind of blown up, but I wanted to highlight this smudge here. Now, I'm sure some of you might know what this is, but many listening might not. When I do live talks, I always get people to guess what this is. But this is actually a galaxy we're seeing. This is the Andromeda galaxy, this faint smudge, and that is a completely independent island universe outside our own Milky Way, which contains hundreds of billions of stars. And many people are surprised to know that you can access an object like that with a pair of binoculars or even naked eye. You don't need fancy telescopes to appreciate the night sky. And this is just a satellite that's crept into the image here. So that's my introduction to myself and Brecon. So I'll move on with the talk now, which is about the winter solstice. And happy solstice, by the way, to everyone. So let's talk about how people would have perceived timekeeping way before we had computers and digital calendars and so on. Now, I hope you can see this animation here. It's actually running a little bit slowly. This is showing you the altitude of the sun looking south if you were to take an image at the same time every day through a year. And what you'll observe is that the sun climbs, it gets higher in the sky, and then at midsummer, on June 21st approximately, it stops, it pauses, and then it turns round, and it does the same when it reaches its lowest altitude. And this concept of the sun standing still at both points in this cycle is where the term solstice comes from. Sol sistere, or sun standstill. And that's certainly how our ancestors perceived it. And with this movement of the sun through its maximum and minimum altitude, you get the ebb and pulse of the seasons. This is an amazing image of the Earth over the North Pole, just showing you the extent of sea ice and ground frost throughout the seasons. And again, our ancestors would have been acutely aware of this. When we were hunter-gatherers, we relied on knowledge of the seasons when they were changing, and when we moved into agriculture, it became more important. Now, an interesting artifact, if you were to take a picture of the sun from the same position every day, you would actually sketch out something called an analemma, which is a little bit like a figure of 8. Now, you might think, well, people way back wouldn't have known about this, but actually, if you just put a stick in the ground and measure the furthest point of the shadow, you could also sketch an analemma like this. And actually, there are some suggestions that potentially Pictish art has representations of these kind of knotted designs. But one of my favourite films actually has a reference to this. This is Castaway. I'm sure many of you have seen it. I think it's a great film. But there's a good scene where the main character actually uses an analemma to track the seasons to plan his escape from the island. So again, even these primitive ideas of using just the altitude of the sun can be used to mark the seasons quite effectively. Now, it's not just the altitude of the sun in the south that you can use to mark the seasons. The rising and setting position of the sun also changes throughout the year. So people are commonly used to thinking about the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, but it only does that during the equinoxes. And in fact, at the moment, because we're at the winter solstice, the sun is rising in the southeast and it's setting in the southwest. And this is an interesting animation. A guy in Germany just put a camera out his window, which was east facing, and he took pictures throughout the year just to show this movement. And the further north you are, the more pronounced this change in the sunrise and sunset position. Let's talk about the amount of daylight. Currently, where I live, I'm being a little bit geographically biased here. This is a chart for Inverness. Now, if you're anywhere in England or potentially down in London, you've got quite a bit more daylight at the moment, and you've got less daylight in midsummer. So at the moment, we have only got about 6 hours of daylight this far north in Inverness, 57 degrees north. Again, in London that creeps up to about 7 hours 20 minutes. But look at the difference between that and midsummer, when we had 18 hours of daylight up here, and actually we don't get any darkness at all during this period. But what I wanted to draw your attention to was how quickly this changes. If you look at these curves, now the fact we've reached the solstice means the days are going to get longer again, but they will feel like they're not growing in length at all for the next few weeks. In fact, if you look at the difference in the sunset time over December, it only varies by about 5 minutes. But when you get into January, it increases to 11 minutes and it gets more and more rapid. And as you go into March and April near the equinoxes, it feels like it's accelerating. And many people notice that the days either get longer quicker close to the equinoxes. And that is a real phenomena. Now, just for contrast, this is Nairobi on the equator. And look how static the amount of daylight is near the equator. So what I'm going to talk about today, the significance of the solstice, the winter solstice in particular, in many ways it was only relevant to people living in the cold northern extremes in the northern hemisphere, or indeed conversely in the southern hemisphere, because we experience the most extreme weather changes. Now, what drives these seasonal changes then? Let's talk about why we experience seasonal change and the different the changes in the sun's altitude and rising and setting position. Now, there's a common misconception that it's because the Earth travels around the sun in an ellipse and we're closer at one point and further away at another point. And while that's true, that is not enough to drive the seasons at all. And in fact, if you compare the orbits of the Earth to something like Mars, Mars has a far more eccentric orbit. By eccentric, I mean its eccentricity is higher. It has an orbit much further away from a circle, whereas the Earth actually doesn't have a very high eccentricity at all. And the real reason that we experience these seasonal changes is due to something called inclination. And that is our Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees. And therefore, now this is not to scale this illustration, the Earth is permanently inclined in one direction, and as we orbit the Sun, we therefore get more or less sunlight. So let's just have a look at that with relevant dates overlaid. So here we are at the moment at the December solstice, and the northern pole of the Earth is inclined away from the Sun, and we therefore have less daylight. Now, at these two periods called the equinoxes, no part of the Earth is inclined towards the Sun, and that's where the term equinox comes from, equal night and day, where most places on the Earth experience round about 12 hours of daylight and nighttime. So that's the reason why we have seasonal change. Now that leads me to a more precise definition of the solstice, and just for reference, the solstice today actually occurred at exactly 10:02 a.m. So we've passed the solstice officially, and the definition I'm using here, which is the astronomical definition, is the exact point in time when the North Pole is tilted furthest away from the Sun. And here we see just a close-up view of this. The Sun is coming in from the left here, and currently the North Pole is inclined away from it. So if you were in the Arctic Circle right now, it would be pitch black. There is no daylight there. And of course, in the Southern Hemisphere, they're in midsummer. And this is just to show you that actually the solstice can change and can jump into different days occasionally. The reason for that is the Earth travels around the Sun 365.25. It takes 365.25 days for the Earth to travel around the Sun, and therefore the solstice jumps ahead 6 hours each year, and that's why we have the concept of an extra day in February, which corrects that. So occasionally the solstice creeps into another day, and then it comes back again. And another point of interest is during the current winter solstice, the Sun is actually shining over the Tropic of Capricorn. Now you may remember this from your geography lessons, but Capricorn is actually a zodiacal constellation. And way back when the early globes were being created, the Sun would actually be in the constellation Capricorn during the winter solstice. Now, what might interest you to know is the Sun is not in Capricorn today, it's in Sagittarius. And the reason for that is all the zodiacal constellations have shifted due to a phenomenon called precession. Precession is because the Earth does a giant wobble every 26,000 years. And way back when the astrologers were producing the zodiac properly, this was not known. So if you are a particular star sign, you might be interested to know that when you were born, the sun was probably not in that constellation. It was in a different constellation. And this slip of the zodiac constellations will increase as time goes on, and it will eventually go back in 26,000 years. Now, another interesting byproduct of that is that the pole star changes over this period as well. Polaris is only our current pole star, but in the future it will change. And in about 13,000 years' time, the star Vega will be our North Star. So that's the technical definition aside. I want to go back now into the cultural side of the solstice. Why was it important to our ancestors? Now let's think about human beings as a species. We've been living in this sort of technical, sedentary existence for not an awful lot of time. When you consider the history of the human species going back millions of years, for most of that we were wanderers, we were nomadic, we were travellers, we would hunt animals, and only recently did we move to agriculture. So knowing when the solstice occurred would be critical to know when ice would melt and when we could travel in our small groups to find food. And also the migration of animals as well. We needed to know that, and again that would be tied to the seasons. When we moved into agriculture in the Neolithic, which is only thousands of years ago, again it became even more important that we knew when we had to plant and grow, and if we got that wrong that could mean starvation and death for large communities, so it was really important. And even fertility was important way back. We take it for granted now. Modern medicine, we can conceive and have a child at any time of the year and we don't need to worry. But way back, it was important to conceive at specific times of the year. And in fact, in Sweden, there is still a tradition of dancing around the maypole, which is a fertility rite. And the idea is if you can conceive on the summer solstice, in 9 months' time, your baby will be born in the spring, and therefore you've got a much better chance of the child surviving. It's not going through a harsh winter when it's in its infancy. But also there was religious and communal reasons to mark the solstice, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that further in. And it was also a time for slaughtering animals. If you had a herd of cattle, you wouldn't want to feed them over the winter, you would slaughter them, and therefore it was a time of great feasting, where meat would be plentiful. And this ties into our modern celebrations of Christmas, when we generally eat lots of meat and so on. Now there's a really nice caption from a book I wanted to read to you now. And again, I want to try to transport you back to this time when our ancestors were living in cold climates, potentially in Scotland, Scandinavia, anywhere in Europe. And they're reaching midwinter and it's becoming oppressive and cold. And this is just a quote from the book Handing Down the Old Ways. And I'll just read it verbatim to you. At the winter solstice, we reach the depth of darkness with the longest night of the year. Darkness has reached its peak. Now we start to wonder, will this continue? Will the earth grow darker and colder as the sun disappears into the south until only darkness is left? But at Yule a wonderful thing happens. The sun stops its decline, and for a few days it rises in about the same place. This is the crucial time, the cusp between events. The sun stands still and everyone waits for the turning. In our heads we know the light will return, but in the darkness of winter, can we be sure? Do our hearts believe what our heads tell us? Will the light keep its promises? We all have moments of darkness when we don't know how much deeper we will go before the light starts to return, or even if it will. The sun does start north again, and the light comes back. In the world, in our lives, the light comes back. This is indeed something worth celebrating, and it has been celebrated throughout the Northern Hemisphere in remarkably similar ways. And I think that passage, again, highlights the significance of the solstice for our ancestors. They needed the reassurance to know that the sun was coming back and that brighter and warmer days were in the future. And that leads me nicely into a discussion about ancient monuments. Because if you think about a community that needs to mark this event, then what better way to do it than in using a ceremony of some sort, and potentially using a grand structure, something that people can really look up to and be in awe of. Now, one such structure in Wiltshire in England is Stonehenge. Now, I visited it. I'm sure many of you have. If you haven't had an opportunity to visit Stonehenge, you should definitely make the trip. It's an amazing structure. And what I'm highlighting here actually is the midsummer sun, and that rises towards the northeast, and there is a stone called the heel stone that it rises over. And most people celebrate or visit Stonehenge during the summer. But it's very likely that actually Stonehenge was much more of a mid-winter marker. And I'll explain why. If you approach Stonehenge from the other direction, looking towards the southwest, which is the setting position of the winter solstice sun, you'll see the sun set between these great trilithons. And in fact, the evidence suggests that this is indeed the location, the direction from which people would have congregated to Stonehenge. There is a huge avenue going towards the southwest, and people would have walked along here, and that's likely the main significant event that Stonehenge marked. Now, there's always lots of speculation about what I'm talking about, and there's lots of nonsense written about Stonehenge. We have to accept that, but it's generally universally accepted that it was used as a calendar to mark the solar year. So what I'm telling you, we have reasonable confidence in. And in fact, there's evidence of great feasting that occurred in this vicinity. Cauldrons have been found, lots of animal bones scattered around the trenches around Stonehenge. So that's what we think Stonehenge was used for, at least in part. Now, you don't have to go all the way to Wiltshire if you're resident in Scotland. We have many fantastic Neolithic artefacts. This is Mees How in Orkney, and this is a covered cairn. And any of you who have been to Mees How will know that during the winter solstice, light floods into this burial chamber, and it lights up the back of the chamber. But there are other examples. This is Newgrange in Ireland, and it is its passage is facing the southeast, which is the midwinter rising position. And again, light can stream into these passages. Now, we don't know exactly the reason for this, but certainly these were burial structures, and it may well be something connected to the dead coming back to visit us, perhaps, or any number of theories. I have a good friend, Douglas Scott, who knows a lot more about this, and he's written a really interesting book on these places, in particular Clelland Cairns, which is very close to Inverness, and just beside Culloden Battlefield. Now, this is an excellent example of a solstice-aligned cairn. Now, originally, this would have been covered over with rock, and what remains is just the passage facing towards the southwest. And if we look at this map of the site, there are two such cairns that face the midwinter sun. And I'm just going to show you a picture. This incidentally was an image that Douglas Scott took when he put a tarpaulin over the cairn and took an image, and it lit up the back of the cairn. But I did a wee bit of my own research into this, and I went down 2 years ago at midwinter. Now, if you think about it, you could make a trip to Clava Cairns within the next few days, and you could witness this as well. It doesn't have to be bang on the solstice. But this was the midwinter sun round about 3 p.m. 2 years ago, and it was just setting, and I got the timing right. And I stood at the back of the main passage, and lo and behold, the sun shone directly down the cairn. Now, again, originally this would have been covered over, but as an experiment, my daughter Violet stood at the back of the cairn, and I took a picture of the sun striking her. So, amazing place to visit, all these monuments. So please get out there and have a look at these amazing sites. I've only given you a very brief overview of them. I'm going to be doing a talk for the Highlands Astronomical Society in much more detail on this, and for the Hebridean Dark Sky Festival, so do look out for that. Now, a kind of final slide on the solstice. How is it still celebrated today? Well, in a way, Christmas is our modern solstice celebration, because Christmas is kind of an amalgamation of all sorts of ancient traditions that came from paganism. So the Romans had a festival called Saturnalia that eventually blended into the midwinter celebrations from the north, particularly as the Romans conquered these areas. The Scandinavians have Yule, which was a 7-day winter festival. And lots of the trappings of Christmas actually are intricately connected to this. So the idea of tree worship, which again is a very old idea, and presents, where you would give the spirits of the trees presents, which is the idea of decorating the tree, for example, and mistletoe and holly, these all date back to these old festivals connected to the winter solstice. And that's the end of the talk. So I hope that gives you a brief overview of the solstice. So I'm now going to just talk about the conjunction, which many people didn't see. I did go onto Facebook and noted some people had just caught it between the cloud. And thank you very much for those people that shared images. This was the position of the moon and Saturn and Jupiter this evening. But a couple of days ago, I did get some binocular views. This was Jupiter and Saturn. And Graham Bell, who is an excellent photographer, I think Graham's in the feed, he took a brilliant image a couple of nights ago. And here you can see Jupiter with its brightest moons and Saturn up above. So really fantastic to see that. If you could see it tonight, this is the rough arrangement of the planets and the moons. This is Saturn and this is Jupiter. But what I wanted to encourage you to do is go out over the next few nights, because actually tomorrow the weather looks more promising. And in fact, there's very little difference. This is today and this is tomorrow. And you can see the two planets are not greatly different in terms of their separation. Today they were 0.1 degrees apart, which is a fifth of the width of your pinky when you hold it up to the sky at arm's length. Now, if anyone thinks these two planets are actually close together, they're not. This is just a fortuitous alignment of the two planets, and they're actually around 400 million miles apart. So this is what we are seeing at the moment. And in fact, a conjunction like this isn't that rare. Jupiter and Saturn pass each other on the ecliptic every 20 years. It's just that the close proximity is rare. Now, I've got a quick video I want to share, because I did catch the conjunction yesterday, Now, those of you who follow my page may well have seen this, but I'm just going to quickly show you a few highlights. This was about 4:15 p.m. and there we go. I was able to capture Jupiter at the bottom and Saturn at the top, and hopefully you can just make out the kind of diffuse rings on Saturn there. If it was later and a bit darker, you would have been able to see some of the bright moons. Let me see if I can fast forward to get a slightly steadier image. I have lots of camera shake there. There we go. So those are the sorts of views you can see. That was in my telescope, but with binoculars you can see the same kind of detail but just smaller. So definitely worth continuing to go out and look out for this event. Now I'm just going to flick back and I'm going to now give you a rough overview of the night sky. Now it's actually clear in Inverness tonight. I'm not sure about you guys, but I saw lots of stars out before I came in to do the talk. And this is the position of the stars around about 9:20. So hopefully you can see this clearly enough, and I'm going to give you a little tour. I'm going to start in the north. If you look up in north at the moment, one of the main asterisms you will see is the Plough. And here it is. And this is Ursa Major, the Greater Bear. Now let me just switch on the asterisms here. There we go. So hopefully you can see the main asterism here of the Plough, or the Big Dipper in North America. Now, just a couple of pointers. If you have binoculars, look at this star here in binoculars, because it's a fantastic double star. This is Mysore and Alcor, the Horse and Rider, and that is a true binary star system. Those are separated by about 3/4 of a light year. They take tens of thousands of years to orbit each other, I believe. But a really nice binocular double, and if you have 20/20 vision, you should be able to see that double star with your naked eye. Also, some sky navigation tips. If you want to find the North Star, Polaris, you simply locate the two right stars on the bowl of the Dipper, and you travel all the way along and up, and the next brightest star you reach will be Polaris. Now, Polaris allows you to determine north, so if you can see the N down here, that's true north. So once you've found Polaris, you know what direction you're heading. You have a compass, but you also have a clock of sorts, because the stars rotate anti-clockwise around Polaris, and that's due to the rotation of the Earth. Now let me try to simulate that quickly for you. I'm just going to switch on time, and here we go. This is what the stars do over successive hours. They rotate around Polaris. So if you think about it, every 90 degrees that these circumpolar constellations change, you have 6 hours of time. So again, this would have no doubt have been used by ancient people to mark time during the dark of winter. Now, I'm going to switch the asterisms off and move elsewhere. Let's now move over towards the southeast and to one of the most distinctive constellations in the night sky. This is Orion. And Orion is identified by its 3 belt stars, a very straight looking geometry here. We have Betelgeuse in the top left, we have Rigel in the bottom right, and if you want to find the brightest star in the night sky, which is Sirius, you make a line going all the way down from the belt and you get to Sirius eventually. That's only 8 light years away, Sirius, and that's why it's the brightest star in the night sky. If you want to locate the Pleiades, you can use the belt stars of Orion heading up and right, and you will eventually reach the Pleiades and Taurus, which we saw in a picture not long ago. And finally, I just wanted to talk briefly about the moon tonight. If you go out and look towards the southwest, you'll see a very bright first quarter moon. And up above it, have a look directly overhead and to the left, and you'll see a very bright star, and that is actually Mars. So there's an opportunity this evening. Go out, look towards the southwest, and you'll see the moon and Mars together in the sky. So worth looking out for that. So there's Orion. This is Gemini here, incidentally. And again, this is the Plough. And if you want to see the Milky Way, it's towards the northwest at the moment. Remember the images I showed you at the very start over Abriacan. There's Vega, and that's this band of light, which is the Milky Way. So I know that's quite brief, but I didn't want to talk for too much longer. I'm just going to head back now to my deck. And thank you very much for listening. We usually ticket these events. If you've enjoyed this talk, if you feel like buying me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you so much, those who have already bought me a coffee this evening. I appreciate it. But if there's any questions, now I'm going to have to switch my mobile on because for some reason my laptop is not showing me the feed. I can briefly take some questions. The last comment I can see on the feed was from Gillian. And if there's no questions, I'm going to move on to the storytelling segment with Clelland. So I'll just give it a wee second. There's a delay with Facebook Live. Hi Susan, hi Pat, hi Jens, hi Moira. I'm hoping the feed is updating okay. Okay, here we go. Are we due another 26,000 year wobble soon? It's constant, Kirsty. The Earth is constantly going through this cycle. So again, if you go back in history, our ancestors Polaris would not have been their pole star at all. And if you wind the clock forward or backward, you can move to a different pole star. So yes, it's ongoing. What's the easiest way of locating Andromeda? Hi, Brian. Andromeda, right. Let me quickly show you that. Andromeda, to find Andromeda, you need the square of Pegasus, which is here. And actually, it's fairly fortuitously positioned at the moment. If you can find Mars, these two legs extending from Pegasus here, if you can find a bright red star here called Merak, Andromeda is kind of 2 hops to the right. It's hard to describe, but I'm going to zoom in and show you. That's Andromeda there. My advice to you is to use a star finding app on your phone, but the square of Pegasus is what you need to look out for. Let me see any more questions. Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Elaine. Oh, and Suzanne is here. Hi, Suzanne. Abriacan are here. Brilliant. So I think I'll just leave it another minute to see if there's any more questions. And if not, we're going to move over to Clelland. Thanks, James. And of course, you can watch this back. Yeah, I don't know an awful lot about that site. I mainly know about Clava and Stonehenge and some of the Egyptian sites as well, but that's an interesting place for sure. Was the wonky rotation of the Earth caused by being struck by something? Potentially, yes. We don't quite know. There's lots of theories as to why we undergo that wobble. Other planets in the solar system have the same type of phenomena as well, although to a less extent. Kirsty, this is my first time. Nice to meet you, Kirsty. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Gareth. And Thank you very much. Okay, well, I'm going to go now over to Clelland, so bear with me. And at the end of this, I'm just going to leave the feed running and I'll probably terminate after that. And just remember that if you've got youngsters and this is a little bit late, you can always watch this again.
Welcome to Bacon on this cold, cold night. I can see that you're curious. You're a seeker after wisdom. Not tonight. Is what you will find. For I will tell you a tale of magic. See, you're skeptical already, and I know about magic. And for your reward, by the end of our tale, you will also know about magic. For once, magic was everywhere you can see. Trees had it, birds had it, even people had it. But we squandered it. And this is a tale of woe. Woe for us. And a tale to remember and to pass down. For once we made a mistake, and let us not make that mistake again. So, there was magic everywhere. But not magic like what you could pick up or burn yourself on. Although, if you weren't careful, that could happen to you. The magic is far more mysterious, and that's where you find it, in the mystery. But not the mystery, because you need to look at the mystery and find the mystery. But once you've solved the mystery, where's the mystery gone? I'll tell you where it's gone. It's disappeared. And it's the magic that's taken it with it. Magic's to be found in the flames, but not in the heat or the light. It's where the light disappears, but the heat remains. It's that small, small window. That's where the magic is. And as I said, people knew magic. Birds knew magic. People spoke to birds. Birds spoke to people. People spoke to trees. And you think I am crazy. I know this. I can see it in your eyes. But I'm not crazy. And if you listen a bit longer, you may find the magic too. Maybe the magic was everywhere. And everyone used it. But some people found it difficult to find, difficult to harness, and difficult to get what they wanted from it. So they started cheating. And they say at that point, that's when magic left us. But round about this sort of time, everybody was trying to maintain the magic. The trees, the animals, and the birds. Especially the birds. But the birds were a wee bit smarter than everyone else. They knew how to deal with the magic, how to make it their own. So I will tell you of a great competition to see who would be the king of the birds and have all the magic they needed, and they would dish it out like Billy O'Fair. Now, there was a great, great tournament of birds. All the birds were there. Some birds that we don't even have names for anymore. Some birds that we don't even think existed. Some birds that we've maybe killed and obliterated. But one bird was a clear favourite. And one bird is a slight underdog. You know what it's like in Scotland. We like underdogs. So if you wait, I'll tell you the whole tale, and you can see whether you knew who the winner was going to be. A huge tournament arrived. Only one bird didn't compete, and that was the barn owl, the wisest of all animals. Her true name was Kaliach Eicha, and she was going to be the magistrate, the judge, to see who was going to be the king of the birds. And the favourite was massive, he had a wingspan bigger than I am tall. He was huge, and he was fierce, and he was noble. Do you know who he was? The golden eagle, as big as this, standing on the ground. And he wanted the magic all for himself. No one was going to get this magic. He was going to keep it all for himself. Because it's not just men that are greedy. Animals can be greedy too. And Miranda dog that I spoke of, do you think he was standing this high? No, look this high. Wren was there. And when Wren turned up for the tournament, they all laughed. And Wren was like, what are they laughing at? But nobody could tell. Because they were laughing at him. They knew that he didn't stand a chance. Raven was there. Great Crested Grebe was there. Capper was there. And Capper, big strutting Capper, he reckoned he could take on Golden Eagle. Raven reckoned he could take on Capper. But Golden Eagle knew there's only one real king of the birds. Yeah. So the tournament began, and they were divvied up into different groups, and they had different challenges. First challenge, nest building, because all birds need nests. So Osprey was there, Fish Eagle, and he made a huge big platform on top of a tree. Clelland had a look at it. Impressive. A bit smelly though. You know what? Humans can climb that tree and steal your eggs. I'm not impressed. You don't win. And then it was Wren's turn. And Wren took everyone so proud. So proud of his one wee nest. And there it was. His tiny, tiny wee nest. Everybody burst out laughing. Ah, look, it's tiny. How are you going to win with that? Let me tell you, it's not very big. And then there's but. And before you knew it, Great Crested Grebe come in. Come and look at mine. It's huge. It's huge. And it floats. Come and look at mine. And Great Crested Grebe went out into the middle of the loch. And there was a lovely big floating nest. And he thought, I've won. Everybody's clapping. Good nest, it floats, brilliant, yay! You never get flooded, lots of rain in Scotland. So pleased with himself. He did a wee bit of caper, and he actually ran across the surface of the water. And then Golden Eagle said, what happens when it actually floods? Do the eggs stay nice and dry? Nobody went. Great Crested Grebe went. Sometimes the eggs don't survive. Like a bit wet cold. Disqualify straight away. And we Wren's going, but, come and look at me, but. And they all interrupted him. Golden Eagle said, right, let's come and see mine. We need to get up to the top of that mountain. And off they went. Flew up to the top of the mountain. And there was, on a ledge, where no human could get to, was the best looking eyrie ever. Because eyrie is what they call an eagle's nest. And there, sure enough, was a really good looking nest. My nest, said Golden Eagle, weighs more than the Wren's nest, and And Ren went, but. And it weighs more than that waterlogged swamp down there as well. So I should win. And eventually, there's enough silence, and Ren managed to say, but I've got more than one nest. You all built one nest. I've built 12. I don't believe you, said Callie Hiker. The time it took them to build one nest, you built 12. Yeah, that's what I do. I'm very busy, said Ren. Come and show me, said Callie Hiker. Sure enough, Ren had built 10 beautiful nests, 2 scraggly nests. But Kawaiakeika, realising that she was quite a bit smaller than the golden eagle, decided, I can't really give it to Ren. The golden eagle is going to eat me. So I'm going to have to have another competition. So, the next part of the tournament, and something that's important to all of us, not just about magic, but other things, and the main thing is food. Yeah, everybody likes a good meal, but who can provide a good meal? That was a key thing for the king of the birds, because they were the ones that were going to be dishing out magic to all the other birds. And if they were a good provider of food, it could be said that they would be a good provider of magic. But nobody expected what came next. Because Kappa, who is as big as Golden Eagle, big and plump, thought he was going to win. Because he is so greedy. One of the greediest birds ever. He eats all the pine leaves off the Scots pine. Gobble, gobble, everything gone. Stripped bare. Eats the seeds, the twigs, and the buds. Everything. Oh, it is so greedy. So Kappa said, I can eat the most. I'm going to win this competition. So he starts eating and eating and eating. Before long, he stripped one tree, bare to the branches. Next one, bare to the branches. Third one, half stripped. And he said, beat that. Bit indigestion. I think I'll leave it there. The golden eagle knew how to provide as well. And he said, although the mighty red deer stag weighs huge antlers and fearsome temper, is way bigger than me, I can kill and eat him. Just like that. And sure enough, everybody was a bit intimidated. Because nobody took the nest with the golden eagle. So Golden Eagle took off and he soared over the thermals, getting higher and higher and higher. And he was looking. He saw it. Red deer stag. Big, majestic, noble. And he folded his wings back and he dove down so close that he skimmed the hair off the back of the red deer's head, right between the antlers. The red deer stag got such a fright. He banged up and took off in the direction he was pointing. And that's when Golden Eagle knew he had it. And he kept diving. He kept running. Kept diving. Kept running. Kept diving. Kept running. And he was so busy looking on his back, the Golden Eagle attacking him. He didn't see the huge cliff until it was too late. And he slammed on the brakes, but toppled over the edge. Boom! burst arteries at the bottom of the cliff. Golden Eagle got his neck and tucked in, got his knife and fork out, and scoffed them on. Nobody thought that was competition, was it? Until Rain said, excuse me, you ate quite a bit there, and you ate quite a bit there, but can you eat 20 times your own body weight every hour? Because I can't. You can eat more than Golden Eagle. I can eat more than 20 times my own body weight every hour. I wasn't so sure this time, because he almost won the last competition, and it was called a draw. Oh, show us. You should have. Break it down. Come back up. Big juicy one. Another one. Beak. Ram full of spiders. Next one. Flies. Sure enough, you get going. Quick. Darting. Big mouth. And sure enough, the pile of food grew to his size. Bigfoot grew to twice his size. 10 times his size. 20 times his size. And he gobbled it all up and gone. Kelly, I thought, I can't judge this. One eats 2.5 trees. One kills a noble beast 3 times their own size, and one eats their own body weight. I call a draw. But this time, Ren's getting a bit fed up. And she's thinking, right, I don't know how to win this. Every time I think I've gotten beat, they seem to say it's a draw. So, Golden Eagle says, I have got a competition. The bird that can fly the highest and can also fly the lowest shall win the king of the birds. Have you thought it's a great idea? Raven thought he could win this one. Golden Eagle knew he was going to win it. And Wren, whenever they turned round to see what Wren thought of it, Wren was nowhere to be seen. Gone. Disappeared. And they thought, ha! Scared. Scared off at last. Who would think that Wren was going to be king of the birds? So, Raven warmed up, ready to go. Golden Eagle, stretched, poised for flight. Raven took off. Golden Eagle took its great wings and swooped them back and shot into the air. Caught up with Raven. Raven flapped higher and higher with one mighty beat. Golden Eagle overtook him. And with another mighty beat, left him behind. He was the only one left in the tournament. Everybody was left way, way below. Tiny as ants. But Golden Eagle, determined not to lose this time, beat his runs again. And again, and again, until the sky was no longer blue but black and speckled with pinpricks, stars, like the sun was still out. The air was starting to get a bit thin, so he decided to descend down to the earth to see who could fly the lowest, because Raven had already started his descent. But just before the turn of his flight into a dive, a tiny, tiny wee voice popped up behind his ear, and Wren said, I'm higher than you are! And jumped up 6 inches higher than Golden Eagle. And Golden Eagle was furious because he couldn't go any higher. Furious! As he tucked back his wings, tucked down his head, and dove straight into the clouds faster and faster and faster and faster, faster and faster, until he was going as fast as any living creature had ever went before. Man, beast, or even wind. The wind! It was going so fast that the wind couldn't get out of the way in time. It was starting to heat up in front of him. Flames were coming off his beak and the edges of his wings as he squashed the air out of his way. Faster and faster, faster and faster, closer to the earth, closer and closer and closer and closer, until he had to pull up. Just at the last minute, he pulled up and skimmed across the top of the heather, cutting it clean, leaving singed ends as close to the ground as you could. And just at that moment, a wee voice popped up behind his ear. "But I can go lower than you!" And Wrench drove down beneath the ground into a molehill and up the other side. And everybody was, "Whoa! We've got a new king! A clear winner!" And Kilter Kiker, realising that she had to declare the king, held up Wren's wing and said, "We have a new king." And that was how Wren became king of the birds. But if you remember, way back at the start of our story, I told you that men had magic. And I also told you where to find it. But some men were so lazy that they couldn't look deep down into themselves, into the silence in the soul, to find the magic, because that is where the magic is. The tip of the mystery, where you solve it and where you don't know what the answer is. When you hear a bell chime, just before that last note disappears into silence, that is where you find the magic. Where a flame turns from light into heat, that tiny wee window where you can still scorch yourself, but there's no more light, that is where you find the magic. But some people are greedy, and they hide deep down in their soul their greed. They don't let anybody else see it, but they're greedy. Nowadays they're greedy for money, they're greedy for power, but the real greed is greedy for magic. Everyone knows any sort of greed. Doesn't matter what it is. Greedy for food, greedy for money, greedy for affection. It's all to the place the lost magic. And humans, man, greedy for magic. And some found a way to steal it. Who do you think they stole it from? They stole it from everything. The trees, the animals. But because Wren was so wily, it was really difficult to steal it from the end. And I come to you tonight, almost at the pinnacle, the change in the season, the winter solstice, because that is a key moment for magic. Any change, Halloween, spring, equinox, summer solstice, but especially winter solstice, that is where magic can be stolen. Unfortunately, just the same as how plants can't get their own nitrates, nutrients from the soil, we've got to take it from the air. Only some plants can do that. Birch trees, peas, alder trees have all got special roots to grab a hold of that really elusive gas, bind it tight, and use it to make us protein, flesh, bone. And that is how magic works as well. Only some creatures have got power to bind it. And man found trees, and they took the magic off the trees until trees hid it away. And now they say that trees have lost their magic. Animals that used to be able to speak to them hid it away. But birds were the last to have the magic. And at the winter solstice, 6 days after the winter solstice, is when these greedy, evil men tried to steal the magic. Because there are 2 guardians, one in the summer, the Oak King, and one in the winter, the Holly King. And they fight for us, for the planet, for our food, everything round about us. They also fight with each other, like brothers. And at the change of each of these, when they are battled to the last, and the Summer King has beaten the Winter King, there's nobody to look after the magic. And that is when you need to be careful. Because that is when rain is most vulnerable. 6 days plus 6 days after the winter solstice. If you see anyone harming a wren, you know that they're an evil sorcerer, because they're taking the wren's magic from them. So, I'll tell you one last secret. Anyone who's got an emblem of a wren in their coat of arms, or above their door, or emblazoned on their shirt, be wary, because they might be stealers of magic, and they might be able to steal your magic if you're lucky enough to find it.
Thank you, Clelland. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was great to see everyone, and clear skies wherever you are. Remember, you can watch this back again if you've got some youngsters who are in bed and they want to watch the storytelling or the talk. You can do that. Just check the Facebook links. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Okay, brilliant. I'm just going to end the feed there. That's my mobile phone echoing back at me. Thank you, guys.